Alrighty, we've launched. Thanks for hanging in there.
No. Get it in, Chad. Come on.
I should have expected.
Alrighty.
Get in.
We have launched.
That's right. You're listening to Planet Green Trees. Welcome, everybody. This is the official 192nd episode, calling it the Hemp Show. And if you want to know anything about hemp, you want to be listening to this show tonight because we've got a full-packed, really powerfully put-together show. Today is March 27, 2014. Call-in number is 1-347-326-9626. I'm your host, Michael Komorn, and as I mentioned, we're going to be talking a lot about hemp. And to help me bring to you what will be, for you tonight, the most informative and up-to-date, timely information about medical cannabis, cannabis reform, and especially hemp, Chad from the Birmingham Compassion Club.
Good evening. It's nice to be here.
Also joining in the studio tonight, the editor of the Compassion Chronicles. We'll be bringing us the news later on, the one and only Rick Thompson.
Actually, I thought the show was about Hemp, so I studied a bunch of Three Stooges movies. Sorry.
And, of course, the producer, who's packed the show tonight with really outstanding guests, and week after week, helping to form the community, Jamie Lowe from the Third Coast Compassion Center.
Hello.
Now, as I mentioned, we're calling it the Hemp Show, and we're going to be talking about these two bills. House Bill
5440, 5439.
They've been introduced in the Michigan House Representative by Representative Kevin Daley and Peter Petallia. And as reported, the one and only Compassion Chronicles, one bill by Rick Thompson, one bill will enact a new definition of marijuana that separates non-intoxicating industrial hemp from standard strains of medical marijuana. The other will adjust the agricultural laws to remove prohibitions on research and cultivation of the multi-purpose plant. Also, our mini-series will be continuing. Is it can or does? Either way, we've been focusing in these last few weeks on the challenged question of does or can cannabis cure cancer. We're going to be continuing that.
It all starts with a C.
There you go. Joining us tonight, Everett Swift, who I've known for a long time. He's the director of Michigan Industrial Hemp Education and Marketing Project, also known as My Hemp. He's been a longtime advocate of hemp education, hemp learning, using it as an alternative source, driving this alongside of marijuana reform and cannabis, medical cannabis. And I'm sure he's excited to see these events happening for his really long-fought battle, as well as joining us will be Steve Sharp, board member of Michigan NORML. Both men have been very instrumental in educating people in Michigan and working with the legislature to help get the industrial hemp bills introduced. If you may recall, a few weeks ago we had Steve Sharp on, who was explaining to our listeners that he was present at the committee hearing of the introduction of the bill, and explained the process, the parties that were there, the interested persons, the types of questions that were being asked. And seemed to got a lot of real good responses, and I understand Steve's going to be announcing a candidacy in his area for Jamie. What was it?
He'll be running for state representative in the 65th district.
Excellent. We're going to talk to him a little bit about that as well. And I'm going to rant in a little while. We're going to do some news with Rick. And in the meantime, I want to give a couple of shout-outs, if I can, to individuals helping to put the show together. First, a big thanks to Pam and Dewey. Good hang out with you this week, Dewey, and Pam, for all that you've turned Dewey into. I want to thank the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org, all the moderators and administrators who volunteer their time to provide a safe, comfortable forum for patients and caregivers to evolve the conversation about medical marijuana. Komorn Law, 1-800-656-3557. the Marijuana Ranch. Call 1-313-422-5281. Take your cultural tour. Dr. Komorn Singh of the Green Light Clinic, 248-390-0574. I say week after week how important the bona fide doctor-patient relationship is and how doctor certifications are being scrutinized to the extent that it may prevent you from having a medical marijuana defense in court. The reason you go to a doctor is to have someone that will stand by you and come to court and testify about the certification process, and I can attest to Dr. Singh's will to do that. And even beyond that, and the fact that he does follow the state's protocol, we talk week after week, and I know this has been a topic of conversation. Last week we had on Attorney Neil Rockheim, and we discussed at great length the hotel certification process, the weakness in the bona fide relationship. Despite the good intentions of all involved in wanting to provide access, it is going to be very difficult to convince any judge at any given time in any court that the certification that you got, the interaction with the doctor, was at a hotel, not a doctor's office, or any other place other than a doctor's office. I want to give a shout out to our community heroes, Bob Redden and Tori Clark. Life sucks when you are sick and after being tortured for 5 years. Tori has been in hospice, and we wish them our best. Big shout out to Eric Gunnels, the Thetford trustee for the township of Thetford. And shout out to Eric. Also, for those of you that are following the series that we've had about cannabis cures cancer, 2 weeks ago we had Dr. Christian Bogner on, as well as Justin Kander from the Phoenix Tears, associated with the one and only Rick Simpson. And very interesting discussion. I think that was episode 190. If you're interested, last week we had on Uncle Pete, who likewise took a consistent position with the concept of a cure to cancer, and but himself attested to, and many documentations of really people's overall health and cancer being at least stopped, verified in his experience as well. All right, so I think as people, I'm going to rant for a little bit, and then we'll take a little break. There's always so much to talk about, and when I don't know what to do, this always seems to be like a good topic to come back to. But before I get into my beef, I'm going to give a big congratulations to the DeBoer and Rose family and their legal team of Dana Nessel, Carol Steinar, and Ken Mogul. Many of you know this past week the Eastern District Court, overturned the gay marriage ban that Michigan voters had enacted in 2004. And I have to say it's really a historic moment for a great state. I did want to wait a few days and let some of the heroes and their stories, percolate before I tried to talk about this. But it's an interesting situation that had happened, and I want to focus in on the legal arguments of how this thing went down, and just to point out that in conjunction with this event, this legal event, this historic legal event that allowed people to get married and have relationships and to adopt children and have the same legal rights as everyone else, as if in today's day and world that would be offensive or should be illegal. As these things are being fought out in a court of law and resources are dumped into the battle that is taking place on this issue, our Attorney General announced his candidacy to run again for second term. And I don't think that it's fair to let that go by in this last event without pointing out some very, very important issues that cannot be reconciled, that would cause anyone to think that Bill Schuette is good for the state of Michigan in any capacity from any party. Now, I say this, I'm going to try to argue this position objectively, because if you supported Bill Schuette in his defense of Michigan citizens of 2004 vote of 2.6 million voters that were in favor of this law, you would think that he's a real champion for states' rights. And as he stood there before the Judge Friedman, he argued that, listen, these federal laws that the plaintiffs are relying on don't apply here. We, as the state, have an absolute state right to enact these laws. I'm here representing, defending these people that voted for it. I have an obligation on the Attorney General, even though I wasn't at the time. But nevertheless, that's my job. I'm enforcing the laws. Now, Bill Schuette has championed state rights over and over and over again. He joined a lawsuit, the state of Arizona, when Arizona enacted its own immigration law, which has always been a purview of the federal government, always, unequivocally, dragging Michigan into this lawsuit that was later dismissed. The law was overturned. He joined other members in his party from other states, governors and attorney generals alike, in a lawsuit opposing the implementation of the Health Care Reform Act, declaring that the federal government cannot force the states to impose health care, penalties for health care, etc. And that, of course, was dismissed. No costs were ever recovered. And the concept which he speaks of, I think, is an important concept, states' rights. I think, just so we all know this, the 10th Amendment declares that the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. It's been interpreted to mean essentially that the federal government is limited to only those powers enumerated in the Constitution. Each state is separate and sovereign, and final issues are settled at the state Supreme Court. And furthermore, that the federal government can't impose upon the states to enforce their laws. Now, I say all this because when you look at the position that Bill Schuette has taken, it's completely inconsistent with the issue that we talk about in this show, in addition to freedoms and liberties and fairness, the law. This is an issue of states' rights has never been one that Bill Schuette has ever gotten behind. In fact, why those in his party should question his integrity, it's because if you were behind him on the gay marriage issue, and you heard him argue how the federal government cannot, should not, will not control the state of Michigan. We have these rights to enact laws, and the federal government cannot enforce their will upon us. And his opponents, plaintiffs, argued that, in fact, this is a constitutional issue, unrelated. But nevertheless, when the issue of medical marijuana has been addressed or spoken about by our Attorney General, the leading law enforcement officer in the state of Michigan, he has never said one nice thing, ever. I don't think he's ever acknowledged that cannabis has medical efficacy. Maybe, I think I heard him whisper once something to the effect of for those that are dying only, just counting other conditions that are on the list, and now including PTSD. So I don't think he's ever really honestly spoken in a favorable way of the way in which Michigan voters declared that cannabis is medicine and it can be used to treat a number of different conditions. Never have we heard him speak in harmony or concert with the will of the people. And that is despite the fact that the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act 2008 initiative received more votes than any other issue in the history of Michigan voting, more than any other judge, legislature, issue, initiative, or attorney general. And not once has he stood and defended the act. In fact, when he had his greatest opportunity, which was to defend the privacy of the patient, that's an easy one. Everyone's behind privacy. Everyone who would vote for him does not want the government getting into their privacy, especially patients' records, medical records, and especially when the government themselves has told you that if you give us this information, it will be protected privately, like all other medical records. And there'll be penalties for those that release those records. And when our Attorney General, the leading law enforcement officer of the state of Michigan, not federal law, not a U.S. attorney, Attorney General of the state of Michigan, when the first opportunity he had to respond to issues regarding the release of private information promised and guaranteed for the citizens of Michigan, demanded to be kept that way by over 3 million votes. Bill Schuette did not stand with patients. He didn't stand with privacy. He didn't stand with contractual obligations. He didn't stand with the state of Michigan. He declared that he couldn't do anything because of federal law. Didn't even put up a fight. Turned it over. Question becomes, is this inconsistent? Can you be pro-states' rights for one and not the other? I find that very, very difficult. I find there's no time, place, or circumstance that you would ever hear our Attorney General talking favorably about more federal government, and that's good for the state of Michigan or good for politics in general. And when I talk about the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and we haven't spoken about our Attorney General in a while, this past effort that was made, this really terrible attempt to turn this into something in I think it was described by Judge Friedman as the defendants have gotten far afield of the issues in this case. And the federal judge has said that the defendants, our Attorney General, have gotten far afield of the issues in this case. And I'll tell you what, even for those that would vote for him, I want you to think about that. I don't know the last time the Michigan Supreme Court had voted unanimously on any particular issue. They have a very difficult time coming to any kind of conclusions. But on the medical marijuana issues, that first opinion that came up, I feel a lot of times that I think there could be a good case made that the reason why the Supreme Court came together, despite their political differences, is because of their oath to the office of judging, that their duties and responsibility were to enforce and implement the voters' will in a way that was fair and reasonable. Every single chance the Attorney General had to try to interpret, influence the law was in the wrong way, forcing, oftentimes not unanimous, Supreme Court to join and make certain that their opinion was a clear message that the way in which the law is being treated by our Attorney General, who had exceeded every branch of government that he has the authority to be within. He was up and into the legislature trying to enforce new legislation, get new bills passed that was insane. The obsession that he had with trying to destroy the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act brought about some positive effects at the end of the day, because the Supreme Court had to balance the three branches of government and send a message to him that the way in which he had been enforcing it was wrong and there needed to be a full-out change. And in conclusion, I just want to say, what a disservice, really, when it's all said and done, when you have a leading law enforcement agent that has now gone through, so how many years? Was 6-year term? 4? Whatever. But it's at the point now where it's 4. Now it's at the point where there's been no repeal of the law. The federal government hasn't overturned it. The legislature now has, at least on one occasion, had an opportunity to fix the holes that he declared existed, and they did. And you know what? People are still growing in their houses. Patients are still using marijuana. Nothing about the caregiver system was changed. They reinforced the will of the people without the help of the Attorney General, the leading law enforcement agent. There's been no concerted effort, despite the resources provided to his agency, the management of the agency that he is the attorney for. put towards teaching any of the law enforcement community to educate a little bit about how cannabis is medicine. The biggest distraction for the safety of patients and caregivers and their health overall has been that they still are not comfortable, that there has not been an honest attempt to have some change of thought, some change of policy of looking at medical cannabis in a way other than as a public safety concern and instead as a public health issue. And that is bad politics for anybody. And if you don't believe me, understand that if you accept my premise that he's never once spoken well of it or offered any guidance, assistance, even neutral assistance of resolving an issue to make things workable in a guiding way, directing his cast of state police to do things a little bit differently, not once. And he has an obligation to do that. At some point, he lost any opportunity he had to really try to help the voters of Michigan make this law workable. I may not have agreed with where he came out, but today I wouldn't be saying you did a disservice to the state entirely by being an obstructionist, when an overwhelming number of Michigans demanded that you as the Attorney General take a position to try to help implement the act. Your failure to act is a disgrace to the state of Michigan and really is against the oath you took as a lawyer. And there's so much material on him, isn't there? Anyways, that's the rant for right now. I think we should take a break and come back and rock it out as we like to do. You are listening to Planet Green Trees, and we will be right back.